You want to feel that not every working day is like wading through blood.
You want to feel that there's more to life than just getting through with the least possible amount of discomfort.
There's that thing about live to work and work to live, but I can't remember which one is right.
Perhaps it's possible for you to care about what you do.
Perhaps it's possible to believe in what you do.
Perhaps it's possible to believe in something, for Christ's sake.
I mean, how many hours of your life are you spending at work? A third? A quarter?
You want to do something that you feel okay and that you're not some kind of, well, proud of.
So you try?
You work hard to do better.
Yes.
Because it's not wrong.
Yes. Yes.
To believe?
Yes.
It's not wrong to want to believe in something.
When I was a child, I was watching this programme on aliens, and I suddenly realised with absolute clarity that I was an alien. I realised that my mother had been impregnated by alien spores, and that's why when all the other kids were watching cartoons, a cat and a moose I think it was, being killed, I'd be horrified. I would wonder why they were laughing at such terrible things. And I spent a good 4 years terrified that the CIA were going to take me away for some kind of biomilitary experimentation.
You work for a credit card company.
Let's say...
You're in charge of policy.
For example.
Okay, you'd rather be a movie star, or a footballer, or a supermodel, or an aid worker in Sudan. But you aren't, and you're happy. You've done well to get this far. You do a job, do it well, and you get on with it.
You're a good person.
Not perfect.
No one's perfect.
You hate it when your friends do well.
But you feel terrible for feeling like that.
An ordinary fucking human fucking being.
So let's not judge.
You have ideas, for Christ's sake. You think, you have an imagination.
You want to do well for your family.
There are children.
One of each.
A boy of 3 and his 18-month-old brother.
A 3-year-old boy who looks just like your partner. And it's funny, because he's even beginning to act a little bit like him. And that is funny. See this tiny little version of someone you know so well, growing.
You argue about money.
We also argue about telly and childcare.
But one day you have this idea.
Yes, you have this idea.
I sometimes fantasise about when I become an alcoholic, hiding bottles, unable to do anything without a drink, and people talking about me and saying it's such a shame, she's so talented, and being admitted to a treatment centre where I fight against them with all my might, but eventually succumb to the inevitable logic of the 12-step programme, before finally telling my story of triumph over degradation. But to be honest, if I have more than one bottle of wine, I get sick.
You happen to notice that a large amount of people that you turn down for their credit get their credit from other sources.
Not such reputable sources.
But these days you can always get credit.
That pay incredibly high rates of interest.
Sometimes the annual interest rate of 95%, 100%.
You've heard of as high as 160%.
And you wonder about offering.
Not the package I've applied for.
No.
And I'm sorry if this is boring, but it's actually quite exciting.
But a different credit package. For those people whose credit is just too bad.
See? See?
So, because their credit is so bad, they pay back more money.
Which makes sense.
Less actually, as they're paying for the less reputable sources. So you're sort of doing them a favour.
Business. This is how business.
And you look at the amount to be made on the interest repayments.
And then you look at the amount to be lost on the people who default.
And you take the first sum away from the second sum and realise that the difference is a sizable chunk of cash.
A very sizable chunk of profit for your company and its shareholders.
And your job is to make profit for your company and its shareholders. That's what having shareholders is all about. That is the point
And
of...
then you realise that this is one of those ideas, you know? One of those ideas. One of those great ideas. And you somehow feel that, and this may be silly, that this great idea has been given to you from a higher source.
That's silly.
That is silly. And you know that's silly, but that's how it feels. It feels...
You know that this is your chance. The world is holding out its hand. There's some kind of alignment going on. Portal or something. And it may only last for a few seconds. Or maybe not. That's the way it feels. It feels.
And you know that someone else is bound to have this idea any day now. Ideas like this don't hang around long.
And the question you have to ask is, are you the person who sat on the sidelines?
Are you the person who watched?
The question you have to ask is simple. What kind of person are you?
Last week, I was standing in front of this window, staring at this bag that I couldn't afford. And it was a really nice bag. It was. And I felt like I couldn't move. I felt like I couldn't leave because of the bag. I mean, physically, I was rooted to the spot and the hairs were standing up on the back of my neck, and I felt terrible because I was getting so emotional over a fucking bag, and meanwhile there's still no two-state solution in the Middle East. And it suddenly dawned on me. This bag wasn't designed to hold things. It was designed to hold me. Like hearing for the first time. I felt so elated at this discovery that I immediately went in and bought it because it no longer held power over me, and I felt brilliant for the rest of the day. But when I thought about it later, it just kind of seemed stupid. I cried.
It works beautifully.
Increased turnover of 35 million in the first year alone. It's attractive.
People are attracted to it.
And you made it. It's something you made.
And you're rewarded.
And you're promoted. Pay upgrades, yes, and bonuses.
And the respect of the people around you. And you notice when you're introduced to someone, they already know who you are. And sometimes raise an eyebrow as if to say, oh, in recognition before shaking your hand.
Which is nice.
That is nice.
And maybe you start thinking about a new child.
Maybe.
Things are good.
Things are really good.
I'm thinking about becoming a Buddhist because I'm attracted to its philosophies of acceptance, of being in the moment. The idea of being on a journey and its attraction to the universal. But I can't decide whether it's the right thing to do because on one hand David Lynch is a Buddhist, but on the other so's Richard Gere. I've also thought about becoming an evangelist Christian, a tramp, some form of terrorist, a communist and a lap dancer. Actually, anything really that isn't me, I suppose.
But you might find yourself wandering back to those figures.
Yes, to the second son.
Did it falters?
Things are still good.
Oh yes, things are still good. But your mind might find itself wandering back to those people in the second son. And no, you try not to. You might look at these figures as
People.
because they are really.
You're not responsible.
No, of course.
We're all adults, for Christ.
But
You're not responsible, but
maybe this woman.
And she has this hardship. And yes, that's a stupid word, like something out of the 19th century. It's stupid, but hardship.
Hardship. It's stupid, but hardship.
And you might find yourself thinking that what one person does to another is a thing, like a real thing. And that systems and numbers are one way that we do these things are in some way not real. Even though everything we have ever learned has taught us to believe that they are real, and in actual fact they aren't. And the only thing that is real is the thing that you've done to another human being. And strangely, you begin to feel alone and separate. And it's stupid, but you might begin to think of something that you saw in a documentary, and a card written in German that was part of the filing system. And it's really not the same at all, it's ridiculous, but you might think of that person that put the terrible figures on that card and how they managed to live with themselves and how they must have thought of them as figures and figures only. And you know you're being stupid, and you know it's ridiculous, and you know it's really not the same at all. You know in some way it might be, in the mechanics of how you actually do something. and you can't get the image of the fucking card out of your fucking head.
And you might think of someone.
A woman.
A woman.
Out of moments.
When you're out with friends, giving a presentation, making love to your partner.
The image of someone.
A woman.
Overwhelmed.
A woman.
Overwhelmed.
No, it's not the fault of. I mean, there are contributing factors.
Maybe this woman never
A
felt.
one-way.
But I mean, who fucking.
World.
Who fucking does?
I'm just fucking well trying to fit in. I mean, isn't that what we're all trying to do? Do something that someone like us is supposed to be doing.
And you might suddenly feel her panic.
Her confusion.
You might suddenly feel her panic and confusion overwhelming.
I'm staring at these forks. Just standing there in this shop, staring at these forks. In my hands. I'm praying for a sign like one set of forks, the 3-pronged brush steel ones, for example, are going to suddenly get heavier as a sign that I should put back the more weighty, more traditional Terence Malone forks. But then I thought, would the forks getting heavier be a sign that I should put them back? Or that I should keep them? And a sweat broke out on my forehead. I felt prickles in my armpits, and suddenly I felt the cold that sat around my heart, like a blanket of oil begin to creep into the rest of my body. And I thought, here we go. This is it. Here we fucking go. I don't remember the rest.
And you might see her on a ward,
Gone crazy in a shop of all things.
crying, screaming.
Panicking, actually real terror.
She's taken to a ward.
Sectioned.
Only a weekend, but she's taken there for just a weekend.
When her husband visits, he's
Shocked.
He's shocked. I mean, not so much at her, she looks unhappy.
Embarrassed, if anything.
She's not too.
The people around her are. I mean, he didn't expect.
Dribbling.
I'm rocking.
He didn't expect.
Ward.
He should have done, because they said she was on a ward, but he didn't expect.
He counts 13 different people that have visited his wife in that one weekend. She's had to tell the same story 13 different times. And while you're going about your daily business, getting a coffee,
Playing hide and seek with your little girl and then week.
you're doing these things, but the story's still going on in your head.
And you imagine this man. You imagine him.
This teacher.
You imagine him.
In his living room.
He spreads everything out on the floor.
He has a pad and a pen and a calculator that he nicked from work. Bills, statements, invoices even.
After that very weekend, that very night, after having to leave his wife in that place, and he's
Shocked.
Again, he's shocked because he realises all the numbers and figures and red letters add up to a void.
Avoiding her that he should be filling.
Shouldn't he?
And then he finds your great idea
And then he finds your beautiful idea.
and he cries.
he cries deep from within his insides.
And he wonders how it ever got to this.
He resolves to get through it.
I'm feeling much better.
He's going to get the both of them through it.
Feeling great, actually.
He's going to get a new job.
Back in the real world.
He thinks he knows where he can get a job that pays real money.
I'm not taking any time off.
He's going to get a job that pays. Bring her back home. Tell her how much he loves her. And start putting things right.
He loves her.
And she loves him.
But you.
You.
You might no longer want another child.
You might no longer be able to look your partner in the face.
You might find that eating food tastes the same.
Like plastic.
You might find that eating food is like putting plastic in your mouth.
You might find you're increasingly prone to dark moods. You might wonder how to get rid of this feeling. And you might drink.
And you might sleep with strangers.
You might buy stuff and buy stuff and buy stuff.
And you might find that nothing works.
And you may have this terrible
And you may have this terrible fear. And you may have this terrible fear that working or otherwise will actually be like wading through blood.